All right, everyone, welcome again to our SAT ACT Bootcamp, class number 3 tonight. We're going to be covering some math, specifically algebra. Of course, I always like to do the housekeeping items first. Hopefully you've attended class 1, which was the global strategies, class 2 on the grammar. Again, tonight is class 3, the math. Our next class will be on Sunday. So hopefully you're learning some stuff and you're accessing the student folders. I'm going to share my screen as I always do and show you some slides, and we'll go through the program that way. Sometimes I will take my video off so you can actually look at the slides. And if you have some questions, again, always the Q&A or the chat is the best. Yeah, hi, Weston. Good evening to you as well. So again, keep those questions coming throughout the sessions. You guys are doing a great job asking questions to to Alan on Sunday, and then to me last Wednesday, and then hopefully again tonight. So here we go, sharing my screen. We're going to take a look at my slides here. Again, as always, my email is on the board, as well as the email just in general to our Futureology site. You could always reach out that way. So my email, ajrusamano@capousd.org. So if you need to, please reach out, okay? The housekeeping, the student folder, I know some of you have had trouble accessing that, so please email me directly at ajrusamano@capousd.org, and I'll try to take care of that. We've had some issues because there's so many people wanting to access it, so we've had limited access. So I've been kicking some of your parents out because I originally gave them access, so just be patient, just remind me, and we'll get you set up. In the student folder, you'll have access to problem sets, resource handouts, practice test links. I'll actually even, let me show you. Let's share my screen here on, there we go. I'm going to share, let's see. I'll share my student folder with you so you can get a sense of it. So here we go. If you could see my student folder now, you'll see this is what you would have access to in the student folder. So again, to remind you guys, the recordings are in here. So here's the folder, if you click class recordings, you'll see the first 2 recordings there. That's where you go in the student folder. The class slides are the slides that Alan or myself have used, maybe Travis as well. You'll click in here and you go to the slides for that. The practice problems is where we will maybe put some homework or some practice problems. So tonight in class 3, I've put 2 sets of practice problems for the topics I'm going to cover. There's ones with practice problems only, and then ones with the answers. Obviously, don't look at the answers till after you've done the problems. Okay, so that's what the student folder has. And then just some flyers. This one here in the middle has the practice test links. So if you want to get to some of the practice tests from College Board and ACT, go there. Here's our syllabus, welcome letter. All that information is there. It's a flyer, and then here's an event calendar of all the other upcoming events that we have. So again, just little housekeeping stuff. Make sure you guys are on track. Hopefully you're taking a look at that. So that's the student folder. We won't need that anymore. So I'm going to actually take you again back to my slide. So any other questions before we get started? I'm going to take you in. We're going to go through some a lot of math tonight. We're going to do a lot of problems so you can see firsthand some strategies and methodologies to actually solve the math problems that you might encounter. So with that said, take a deep breath. We're going to dive right in. Again, I'm going to share my screen and my slides here. So here we go. Again, don't forget to register for the test coming up. I told about that. Again, if you want to schedule a one-on-one appointment with one of my counselors, you can do that. Again, I'm going to highlight where you can do. You go to our website, CUSD-Futureology.org/appointment events. If you want to talk about anything college or career related, the planning, your test prep plan, if you didn't get the score you want and you're wondering how that fits in, please do schedule an appointment, okay? Somebody said, if we miss the session, how do we replay the video of the session? If you go into the student folder, which I just explained, you just click on the video and you watch it. That's how you'll catch it. So go into the student folder and get that. Okay, I just showed you on the screen. All right, so moving on here. So when we talk about math, here's the math section. Here's a quick little snippet of what it looks like. The SAT has 58 questions. The ACT has 60 questions. The ACT has 60 minutes. So when we look at it, it's 60 questions in 60 minutes. It's a minute per question or 60 seconds per question. We talked about pacing, which we'll get back onto. So if you see right here, the SAT is a little bit more friendly on time per question. So for some of you, that might be very important because maybe you are a little bit slower test taker. So you need to consider that if you're determining which test you should take, SAT or ACT. If you remember from class 1, I recommend only taking one of the exams, choosing the one you're better suited for, if you know that. If you don't, then maybe take a practice test on the ACT because you should have a PSAT score, if anything, at this point. The SAT provides the little formulas. I skipped over it. The ACT does not, okay? And then the SAT is not as geometry focused as the ACT. So I think it was Jack, that would probably be better for you if you're not great at geometry. The SAT might be better for you because it's fewer geometry problems, okay? And the SAT also has what they call grid-ins, where you'll produce your own response. So for you, that you'd rather have multiple choice answers, then maybe the SAT is not for you because you actually have to produce your own answers, okay? So again, that's a, Nikki, the main difference between SAT and ACT, I'm just gonna talk math for now, so we'll talk about that. So I'll get into that and I'll show you some of the differences with actually some of the problems, okay? So I'll get to that. And then Anonymous, best at math and science, which test would you recommend? I'd recommend looking at both test scores. I don't know. There's the science, there is a science section on the ACT, but you don't necessarily need science. So that's hard to answer unless I see 2 practice test scores. So if you have a PSAT already, which you should because you're from Capo and they made every junior take it, take a practice ACT. Email me if you don't have one, or actually don't email me. Go to the practice test links in the site and take a practice ACT and score it. Then compare your 2 scores and you can determine which test I would recommend based on where you scored, okay? All right, so moving on, some of the differences, Nikki, here's some of the differences that I want to go over. Timing is one. The topics covered, so if you see here, for the SAT, you got heart of algebra, problem solving, there's those grid-ins I mentioned. On the ACT, you'll see a lot more geometry, coordinate geometry, plane geometry, and then there's trigonometry, a little bit more on the ACT side. So those are some of the differences. Okay, Nikki, you're gonna have to do the research to kind of learn more. So hopefully you determine after that which test you should take based on some of those differences. Here's some more differences. The SAT has a calculator and no calculator section, more focused on algebra. I said very little geometry. But for the most part, most of the topics are covered on both tests, except for geometry is a little bit more heavy on the ACT, okay? And there's no grid-ins on the ACT, okay? So those are some of the differences. But I really want to spend the majority of my time tonight talking about how you're going to score higher on this test, okay? What are those strategies and methods that are going to get you a better score? Okay, so that's what I'm going to focus on tonight. Some of them I mentioned during our global strategy talk last Wednesday, so we'll reiterate them tonight, okay? So the 5 Ps, these are the 5 things I think you're going to need on the math sections, whether it's the SAT or the ACT, to get a better score, okay? So the first one is your pacing, okay? And we talked about pacing already, right? Remember last week we talked about the rabbit and the turtle, and we talked about being more like the turtle, going slower, okay? So now again, on the math section over here, here's the timing again. The ACT you have about a minute per question, and the SAT they have 2 sections, but overall it's a little over 80 seconds per question if you combine both sections on that. So you'll have a little bit more time for the SAT. But when we talk pacing, okay, and I showed you the rabbit and the turtle, and I said it's about accuracy, and accuracy reigns supreme. What you need to figure out, and we talked about it last time, is what you're scoring currently and what your goal score is. So if you're a 500 or mid 500 test score, you should not be attempting every single question on the SAT or the ACT. You're just not in the range to be doing that because you're wasting time trying to do hard questions that you might typically get wrong. So your pacing is going to be different for everybody out there. Now, if you're already scoring 700 on the math SAT or 31 on the ACT math, you should attempt every question. You're in that range. But if you're not, your best strategy is to focus on what we call POOD, which is your personal order of difficulty, and doing the questions that best suit you. Okay, so again, this is a reiteration from last week. And the reason being, it's that important. And it can change your score quite a bit by having the proper pacing and following your own personal order of difficulty. Okay. So again, just to quickly remind you that if you're a mid-range scorer, then guessing on some of the harder questions at the end, so you have more time for some of the easier questions or the questions you're better suited for, will actually get you a better score. Okay. And on the SAT, and we talked about that, I mean, on the ACT, we'll quickly go through these. We looked at, 60 questions, 60 minutes, and especially on the ACT, they're a little bit more divisible in terms of easy, medium, and difficult questions where they're located. So on an ACT, if you're a mid-range scorer, you shouldn't be spending time here in the difficult area. You need to slow down, okay? So let's actually look at an actual test. So let's pull up an ACT. So I'm going to switch over. Let's see. And let's pull up. So if you can see my screen here, oh, I'm going to unpause it. I guess it got paused. I'm going to share it again. So hopefully now you can see an actual section of the math. There's an ACT math section. Okay, so here's section 2. The other thing to note, guys, and this applies to the whole test, you see these directions in the beginning? To help you with pacing and give you more time, you should never read the directions. You should know all the directions beforehand. That includes the math, the reading, the writing, whatever section you're taking. So this math test, it's basically just solve, all right? So don't read the directions, all right? So two things. One, pass system. Pass system is actually doing all the questions that you want, okay? And if you have a problem with a question, so for example, I'm going to answer this question, and let's say I'm doing it, I'm attempting it, oh, I picked my answer, I'm crossing things out, I'm actually marking it up, I'm doing question 2, question 3. The pass system is doing all the questions, okay, that you want to do. So if you're that mid-range scorer, you don't do maybe question 45 to 60, you just guess and bubble in. And then the second pass, when you come a second time around, you're doing questions that maybe, let's just say you had a question on number 3 and another question on number 6. You're going back a second pass and you're redoing them. You're not doing question 1 and 2 because you got those for sure. So what you need to do is make a little mark. For some of you, it might be like a little dot. I used to do the ones that I had questions on, I used to do a little question mark so I knew to come back to it. If there wasn't a question mark, I didn't come back to it. That's the pass system. Now, you can come back 2 times. You might come back 3 because you're only doing 45 questions. If you're scoring 700 or higher, you're probably not going to be able to come back for a third pass. Okay, so make note of it. Come up with your own system. Again, I do question marks. The other thing is to make sure you're writing in your booklet. If you got, that's not the answer, cross things out and then circle the right answers and make sure you're doing that. Okay. So that's really important. So that pass system is important. The other thing to when you're scrolling through the test, okay, clear my drawings here, is you're scrolling through the test here, you're finding your personal order of difficulty. So Jack said he was not very good at geometry. Well, Jack, if you came across a geometry question like number 13, maybe you would go from 12, skip 13, and go right to 14. And then maybe at your second pass, you come back to 13. So that's a good approach if you know geometry is your demise. And that's what we call personal order of difficulty. Now, in order to know personal order of difficulty, you have to know what kind of tester you are, what kinds of questions you get right or wrong. So if you have your PSAT score, okay, then you can go back and look at some of the questions you miss on the SAT. If you've taken a practice ACT, you can do the same thing. Okay, so personal order of difficulty, you're floating through, and so Jack might skip 20. Okay, and he might go, oh, I'm going to do 21, sure, 22, okay, great, 23. He might hit 30 and he might skip it, or 26 and might skip it because he doesn't do well in those questions. So find what those are and make sure you're following those to your personal order of difficulty. So for example, on this page, for me, I'd like the geometry. I would do 39, 40, 41. I would hit 44. I might skip 45 and then go to 46. So that's my personal order of difficulty. So again, find that out, do that, and make sure that you're following it and keeping a good pacing plan. Everybody's going to have a different one. You're going to do the number of questions you're going to do are going to be different than the person next to you. So don't follow their pacing plan. Okay. So again, I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint here. All right. So any questions on that, on pacing, on personal order of difficulty? So really, you're not want to spending time on these long word problems, especially if you don't do well on hard questions. Skip them. Skip over questions you don't really get. Focus on the ones you got and aim for that accuracy. Okay, so that's really a key. All right, so moving on, we'll skip through. We already did this. Okay, so now I'm going to go into what we call techniques. And along the way, we'll talk a little bit more strategies, like doing scratch work on your test booklet is hugely important. I was tutoring a kid not that long ago, and he did no work. He did everything in his head, and he still got about a 25 on the ACT. And then we had one session. It was just a matter of, hey, put your work down on the paper so you don't have to rethink it. I mean, he went up a couple points just from learning how to write work down so he can be more accurate and not make careless errors. That might be your difficulty. I don't know. We talked the last session, you need some content knowledge to do well. You need some strategy. We're talking strategy like pacing, personal order of difficulty. You're also going to need what we call technique. These are step-by-step methods for solving specific problem types. That's what we're going to spend this next hour on, is our techniques, okay? I'm going to give you a game plan for math, how to approach these types of problems, okay, that are proven to work, okay? You just got to trust me. And you have to just learn it and repeat it, rinse and repeat, get really good at it. It's like when you learn to tie your shoe the first time, the second time, it took a while. You'd have to make a loop, you'd go tie one loop. Well, the way I do it is tie a second loop. I do 2 bunny ears, then tie. It takes you a while. My kids are learning to tie their shoes now, but now they don't think about it. They just do it because it's become more instinctual. They kind of know it by heart, more rote and routine. That's where we got to get with you. So if you don't have the proper techniques or what we call methods, you need to learn some, and that's what we're going to show you right now. Okay? So here's a question. All right, so guys, read it to yourself, and we're actually going to do this together. Okay? And I'm going to show you a technique to how to solve this. Okay, so you might see a question like this on either the SAT or the ACT. So how do you solve these questions? What do you do? Okay, so take a look. First of all, what type of problem is this? So if you know what type of problem it is, chat it in there for me. Well, it's an algebra problem. How do we know? It's got algebra in the answer choices, okay? So you see the algebra right there. That's how we know, okay? A lot of students and a lot of really good students, they will actually go and solve it. Does anybody have an answer for me already? And if you do, chat it in or put it in the Q&A, no problem. Um, I'm going to show you my technique. And just because of time, and I want to get to teaching you a method. Um, Instead of doing algebra, a lot of people like to do algebra on the test. That's not always a good way to do it. And the reason being is it takes a lot of time, especially on harder questions. You might get the ones on number 3 and number 5 right, but when you get to number 48 or 50, it becomes tougher. It's not even just tougher, it also takes a longer time. So I'm going to show you a method. Now, you might not believe me or you might not want to do it, but I'm telling you, over time, it's going to be helpful. So the first technique is about picking a number. So instead of using algebra, it's better to pick a number and solve for that, okay? So that's what we're going to do is we're going to pick a number. Somebody mentioned this the other night, and I've already got a few different answers. Some people say uh, the first one, someone said the third one. So let's go over it now and make sure, okay? So let's pick a number. So the first technique is to pick a number. So let's just do this. We're going to pick 3 numbers here. We're going to pick one for X, Y, and Z. Why? Because that's the variables that they're giving us. Okay, so, and it's a longer word problem. This problem would not be an easy problem. Okay, so one is the things that we need to learn is recognize, is it an easy, medium, or hard problem? You'll be able to know on some of the tests based on the number it is, where it is, or how long it is, or how many parts there is. This one is obviously going to be a more difficult, medium to hard one because of the steps and the number of variables here. So if I were to pick 2 for X, and Y I pick 3, and Z I pick 4. Now, number one, when you pick numbers, pick simple numbers. It makes the math a lot easier. Plus, if we read this, to find a skater's final score, her scores from 3 rounds or averages. Well, if I pick these 3 numbers, the average is easy. I just pick the middle number. So the next step would be to find the average. Well, if I pick those simple numbers, I don't really need a calculator to do this. So it makes it really easy. The next step, all right, so we're picking numbers. Now we go back and we're solving it. With long word problems, take them in steps. So I took the numbers, I plugged them in, I found the average of the compulsory rounds. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make F a number. F represents the freestyle score. So let's say we're picking 5 in here, okay? What's this gives the figure the skater's final score? Well, if I take the average and the final, all right, and I divide it, I can get a score of 4 being the figure's final score. Okay, now I'm going to take it slow, and we're going to do more problems like this so you can practice this method, okay? So the technique is picking a number, solving for a target. Notice, and this is all the stuff I write in my test booklet. And once I have the target, the next thing to do is do process elimination. And go to all your answer choices and plug in what you picked for X, Y, Z, and even F. And once you find your target, you have your answer. So if we go here and we look and we're looking for 4, it's actually going to be G. Now, some of you might have did it algebraically, so you thought, oh, well, then it's F for sure. Rika, but you said, but guessing the correct numbers would take ages, wouldn't it? What do you mean by that? Can you add, if you, we're not trying to guess the correct numbers, the point of this, I don't know what you mean, so you're going to have to give me a little bit more. The point of this is to actually the 2, 3, and 4, you can say 5, 9, and 11 if you want. You can pick any numbers you want. So the method is picking any numbers you want. Okay? Any numbers you want. So it's not picking the right numbers. We're not guessing the right numbers. We're picking any numbers we want. I just happen to pick 2, 3, and 4 because it makes the math easier. okay? So a lot of you picked the wrong answer, and part of it could be you were doing it mathematically or algebraically, which makes it more difficult. So again, I'm going to take this, I'll walk back through it. Let's back up here. I'm back up here. So just so you guys get it, and we'll do more problems on it. Okay, I'm going to go, why would you divide by 2? No, why did you say average was final by 2? Okay, guys, I'm going to go through it again, okay? By the way, somebody asked, wouldn't this take a long time? No, it doesn't. That's why I gave you that tying the shoe analogy. When you first started tying your shoe, it took a long time. Does it take a long time to tie your shoe now? No, because you know how to do it now. So the point of learning methods or techniques is you got to get good at these things. I don't expect you to be able to do this tomorrow, okay? Right now, it might seem like it takes a lot of time. But once you get good at it, I'm telling you, that's why you need practice. That's why when you prep for a test like this, you can't just, tomorrow I know how to do it. No, you might understand what you need to do, but it's going to take practice and doing lots of problems, okay? So Rika, let's start all over again, okay? And now I went through fast on it. So we read the question. The reason why I can use this method we call picking numbers, or what we call plugging in, is because there's algebra in the answer choices. Okay, so I'm going to get you to one to learn how to recognize these types of problems. They tell me X, Y, and Z represent compulsory scores. I don't know what they are, but when you see a problem like this, instead of dealing with variables, let's deal with numbers. Understand? So instead of using X, Y, and Z, forget X, Y, and Z. Let's pick numbers. So Rika, you could have said 7, 9, and 11. I don't care, whatever you pick. I'm picking 2, 3, and 4 because those are small numbers, they're easy, and they make the math easy. So that's how I got them. The reason I got to do this, it's just a method or a technique to do algebraic problems. Okay, so now we're picking numbers. The reason we're picking numbers, and the first thing it says, the first sentence is to find a skater's final score. So this is how they're doing it. Okay, so if you guys are reading this question, and all the questions relate to this. Why did you divide by 2? Why did you say average plus the final? It's because it's given in the problem. So I'm going to take you. So first step in a plug-in problem is picking numbers. So I get to pick a number for X, Y, and Z first. Okay, so that's what I did. Okay, so I picked X is 2, Y is 3, and Z is 4. If you want to pick 6, 8, and 10, go right ahead. If you want to pick 15, 75, and 140, I wouldn't recommend it because it makes the math harder, but you can do that too. Okay, so again, we're going to walk through this, and then we're going to do a lot more problems. Okay, so now we're going to try to solve the problem, and this is where some of you guys are like, why'd you divide by 2? What did you do here? Again, to find a figure's score, I'm just reading the problem. The 3 compulsory rounds are average. So what I'm doing is I'm going to average this 2, 3, and 4. If I average 2, 3, and 4, because it says to find the final score, the first thing you got to do is got to average the compulsory scores. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay. So now I'm going to average those scores, which looks like this. Oh, I just picked the middle number because I picked numbers in succession. Okay, great. 2, 3, and 4, the average is in the middle. If you wanted to figure the real average, you would go 2 plus 3 plus 4, all divided by 3. That's how you find the average of 3 numbers. But I picked numbers to make it easy. Second step, the resulting score is then averaged with her score from the freestyle round. That's why I said the next step, but we don't know the freestyle round. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to make up a score. Again, I'm going to make up an easy number 5, because then if I take 3, which was this part, the resulting score, which is 3, and the freestyle, which is 5, now I'm going to take those 2 and divide by 2 because I'm going to average those now. That's how you get your final score. So all I did was I took it one line by one line by one line, and that's how I got these 3 parts here. Okay, does that make sense? And that got me the target of 4. So 3 plus 5 over 2 gives me 4, which is the target. Okay? I gave you a hard question purposely because when I asked you guys to find the answer, most of you picked F. You're like, I know the answer, F. That's what you do. But because you did it algebraically, most likely. Great, Rika, you got it now. Perfect. But it's just because you get it doesn't mean you can put it into practice. That's why we're going to do more practices. So now the next part of the technique is once I have the target, I plug into my answer choices. X now is going to be 2, Y is going to be 3, Z is going to be 4, F is going to be 5. And I'm looking for the answer 4. Make sense? So it's not this, because when I plug this in, for example, 2, 3, 4, so that is 9 over 3, which is 3, plus F, which is 5, that's 8. That's not 4, so it cannot be F. So you see what I'm doing, guys? I'm just plugging in the numbers, and if it doesn't come out to 4, it's not my answer. But the answer is G, because when I put all the numbers in, divided by 6, it equals 4. Okay? Great, makes sense. All right, so if it makes sense, then we're ready to do another problem. Okay? So here's another one. Different problem, but I want you to start working on it yourself. So pull out a piece of paper, and this is where you put into practice what you're learning. Okay? So, two things. One is recognize that is what we call an algebraic problem. How do we know? If you look here, there's variable in the answer choice. I now know I can use this technique of picking numbers or plugging in. It's the same thing if you've heard the term before. Also, if you ever see the word in terms of X, you know it's one of these problems that we can pick a number. So Rika, you can pick anything for X. That's part of the magic of this. You get to pick anything. So again, the technique is, well, one, I always cross out in terms of X. The second thing I usually do with these types of problems, I underline what the answers represent and what I'm looking for. How much does the TV cost? So now I'm going to pick X, something for X, and X represents Eric, okay? By the way, again, I just remind you guys, it says John on the screen. It's really Anthony. We borrow his Zoom platform, okay? Okay, some people are guessing answers. Great, go ahead. But I'm going to walk through this and show you the technique. I'm also going to turn my video off. So you guys can focus on the screen. So Eric's paying $20. I'm making it $20, okay? Because, well, I know the test very well, and I know what good numbers are. The reason I'm picking 20, because it talks about something about half and twice as much. I need a number that can go into that, or a number that these things can go into, half and twice, and 20 is a good number like that. So now, excuse me, now I'm going to start the process. And some of my participants, Kypros, you're doing the algebra. Okay, I don't know. You give me an answer, but I don't know if you're doing the algebra or not. So I got to make sure you guys aren't really doing the algebra. It takes too long. Okay. So Eric pays 20. So now let's do the problem. We plug this back in, and now we're going to solve using the numbers and the math. I know I'm going slow, but we had a lot of questions the first time around, so I'm going to go slow. So if we're here. If Lisa, Eric, and Michelle buy a TV, stop. Lisa pays half as much as Eric, stop. So if Lisa pays half as much as Eric, so Eric pays 20, so Lisa pays 10. So hopefully you guys get that. And twice as much as Michelle. Now be careful. Who pays twice as much as Michelle, Lisa or Eric? And if you're reading it properly, it's Lisa pays twice as much as Michelle, not Eric. So now if Lisa pays twice as much as Michelle, Lisa pays 10, Michelle pays 5. Okay, so how much does the TV cost? So what we got to do is we got to add them all up. So our target when we add them all up is 35. So the TV costs $35. So we're not dealing with algebra again. We moved it to numbers now. So all we have to do now is plug in and process eliminate. We have to put X is 20 into all these equations. And then once we have 35, we have our answer. Okay, and Somebody's right. Some people picked B. Perfect. Nikki, no, it's not D. This is how we got it. So Nikki, you got to go back to do it. This again, notice how I'm doing the same technique. I'm picking a number for the variable. I'm going through each line of the word problem. I'm solving it based on what's given to me, find my target, then I do process elimination and I search for my target. Here's the thing, if sometimes more than one answer works in this, you've got to plug in a different number. Okay, that might happen on different questions. So let's do another one, okay? Here we go. And all I'm going to point out here is, so this would be a problem for the ACT. Why? Because it's got the F, G, H, J, K, and there's 5 answer choices, which is the ACT. But I know it's a plugging in because there's variables in the answer choice, and there's these X's and Y's over here. Okay, that's how I know. So I'll give you a couple minutes. Take a look. If you've been listening, then hopefully you're not going to use algebra and try to do it in your head and solve it algebraically, that you're going to use my technique, which is going to come in handy to save you time. It takes me half the time to do it with plugging in than I do it algebraically. Okay. Anybody have any guesses here? All right, everybody. All right, we got some J's, some G's, some K's, some L's. There's no L's in here, guys. So I got a lot of different stuff. I've gotten every single answer on the board now. So that tells me it's time to go at it and show you guys how to do it. So again, we're going to do this repetitively, and we do it repetitively because you've got to learn the technique. It's going to take you, it takes you weeks and months to learn some of this stuff. You can't do it in a day. So what I encourage you to do, and part of your homework is going to be to go to the practice problems section of the student folder. I'm giving you additional plug-in problems and the other topic I'm going to cover tonight. And do those problems, and I give you explanations on how to solve those. The other part I want you to do is actually go through an ACT like I was doing before, an SAT, and try to find some of these plug-in problems and go, oh, here's one, and be able to recognize them. So here we go, rectangular box. By the way, if they tell you something like a box, it's best to draw something. So let's draw it. There's a rectangular box. Now it's measuring X by X and a height of Y. Well, it's a plug-in, guys. Let's just make X something. So again, I pick simple numbers because I'm a simple man. So X is 2. Let's make Y 3. Oh. So what it's saying is surface area. Surface area is, let me get my pen here. Surface area is like the face of this. Let me color it in here. Is one side. So if X is 2, that means that's 2 and that's 2. So that surface area is going to be 4, just on that one part. Then there's a whole nother bottom that's 2 by 2, right? And if these are 3 here. So what we've got to do now is find our target. The way we do that, if this is 4, this bottom is 4. I don't know if I actually put this in the problem here. Good, I've got answers coming in still. Oh, I didn't draw. I'm going to finish drawing it on there. Let me go back here. So then if this is 3, the writing is not coming in as well, and that's 2, then this whole surface area is 6, okay? So that side is 6, this part is 6, this side is 6, and the back is 6, right? So we have 6, 6, 6, and 6, which is 24. Then we have the top that is 4 and the bottom that is 4. That's the surface area. So by plugging in, all we had to do is we picked our own numbers and we got the surface area of 28 plus 8, which is 32. There's my target. So I take my X and Y, plug in here, and I'm looking for 32. And that's how I get it, guys. I clear all my drawings. And it's J. So those of you picked J, great. Nikki, good job. Some of you, good job. Other people, now maybe you found the answer at J because you actually did it properly. All right, excellent. Okay. All right, let's do another problem. Again, it's about repetition and practicing it once you learn the technique. And you can do this when you see all those algebra in the answer choices. The first part is just recognizing it. Okay, so here's another one. So I already underlined what they're looking for, the total time in hours it takes to travel the entire trip. Yeah, try to do this one in your head or algebraically. It's just going to take you more time, I'm telling you. So pick a number. So I'm going to give you a few seconds you to work on this, and then we'll go right at it. And just to prove I'm still here, I'm working hard for you guys, okay? But you don't need to see my mug while we do problems here, okay? Back off. You can't see the next problem? Let me see. Can everyone else? Oh, sorry. Can you see the problem now? Thank you, Alani. Is it Alani? All right. Perfect. I think I stopped it when I did that. Perfect. Thank you, guys. Always let me know. I think when I switch my screen back on. Perfect. And Alani, do you have access? I know you tried to get access to the student folder. I want to make sure. Rika asks, hey, are these shortcuts to solving problems? Well, some of these are just alternative ways to solve problems to save you more time. So yes, I used to be a math teacher in high school, guys, and the way I teach algebra for math class is different than this because teaching math that way slows you down. So you have to find alternative ways and quicker ways to do things. And some of you that are trying to get better scores, you might not have the time. Or some of you that aren't as good maybe in algebra, this is a great way to use. So you need these methods. Now, there are some other mathematical ways. You can solve it algebraically, but I'm telling you, it's going to take longer. So yes, in some ways we call these strategies or methods. You're calling them shortcuts. I don't look at them as shortcuts. All right, here we go. So let's do the problem together now, okay? So now we have our z's. Again, recognize that there's algebra in the answer choices. There's a z, so we can plug in, okay? I'm going to pick a number that really works for me. I'm picking z, which is the miles, 150, because first 80 miles, right, at an average, and then another 70 miles. So together, if I put 150, that accounts for the whole trip, okay? So it just makes the math easier. It even takes practice to pick numbers, but I'm an expert at picking the numbers because I've been doing this test a while. But if you picked 300, it would work. If you picked 400, it just might make the math a little bit harder for you. So again, you have to just practice picking good numbers. So if z was 150, that means the first 80 miles of a 150-mile long trip. And by the way, I had to pick something over 95 because z was greater than 95. So that's what you had to pick. They gave you that parameter right here. So the first 80 miles took us 2 hours because she traveled an average of 40 miles per hour. Okay. See how the math was done? So we had a 150-mile-hour long trip. We're going 80 miles an hour, and we go average of 40 miles per hour. So it took us 2 hours. Okay. Got it? Next step. Again, take them in what we call bite-sized pieces. Don't try to look at it all at once. It just could be overwhelming. So now we got to do the rest of the trip. That leaves us the last 70 miles. But she travels at an average speed of 70 miles per hour. Look at how nicely the math fits in. That means it takes 1 hour to do the second part of the trip. So what is the total time in hours, guys, it takes to make the trip? 2 plus 1. Boy, I can do that math. I don't need a calculator. A lot of people go, boy, I need a calculator for these tests. Well, you can use one, but a lot of times you don't necessarily need it, especially if you pick numbers like this. So that means our target is 3. So now we're looking for 3 when we plug in for Z, which is 150. So when we do that, it's not going to be A, it's not going to be B, it's not going to be C, and it's not going to be E. Whoop, it's going to be, let me go back, it's going to be D, okay? So some of you got that, fantastic. Anonymous said, how did you see that the 70 miles per hour would be an hour? Well, great question, but it's right here. The rest of the trip she travels at an average speed of 70 miles per hour. So she had to travel 70 miles because they did 80 miles of a 150-mile trip. That means there's 70 miles left of the trip. If she travels at an average speed of 70 miles per hour, it takes her 1 hour. Did that make sense? There was 70 miles left, traveled 70 miles per hour. That means it took 1 hour. The math works really nicely. That's why I picked 150 to make it work out so nicely. If you pick 300, yeah, your target would be higher. It would take you longer. So again, the numbers would change, but the answer wouldn't change. Okay, great question. All right, moving on, guys. Another problem. Again, repetition is key. Rika, no, there's not all the questions are like this. The reason I'm showing you this first in the math is that it is the most frequently tested thing in terms of you can apply this to more questions on the test for SAT or ACT than any other type of method. So you won't be able to do it on every single question, but let's just say out of the 60 ACT questions, maybe you can do it on 10 or 12 or 15 of them, which is a lot. That's a big chunk. So I'm teaching you, again, the most essential stuff. We're not going to teach you about trigonometry because there's only 4 questions of that on the ACT. There's a lot more of this on it than trigonometry. Okay, so you can use it on the whole test of the 60 questions on the ACT, the 58 on the math, either one, but it's not every single question can you use this because not every single question is this type of question. So one is you got to learn all the different question types that are out there. In this class, we're going to teach you some of the most frequently tested ones. Like this technique is very frequently tested, so you can use it, and that's why I'm teaching it to you first. Okay. All right, guys. So again, recognize it how? So you're going to see we're going to use the same technique and keep going through it again. We look at it. Answer choices are variables, right? So that tells me I can do some algebra. Y passengers, well, let's make a Y. All right, let's go. Let's hopefully you guys, what I want you to be doing is work on home on a scratch piece of paper that's writing out stuff like this. So first one, let's make the first X 10, okay? At the first stop on its route, a bus picks up X passengers. At the second stop, Y passengers. So let's pick an X first. So first stop, 10 passengers. I'm picking 10. You guys could have picked 20. You could have picked 50. Okay, everybody's still getting different answers here. So I'm saying 10. All right, at the second stop, let's pick up Y at 2. Again, I'm making the numbers easy. I don't need my calculator. I can do this here, but I'm writing this down. This is what your scratch work or in your booklet should look like. At the third stop, 2/3 of the passengers exit. So we have 12 total now, but now 2/3 exit. So 2/3 of 12 is what? It's 8. So 8 exit. So if 8 exit, there's 4 left. Okay. At the fourth stop, 2 passengers get on. So if we have 4 left and 2 get on, We have a 6 total. So how many passengers is the bus carrying at this point? So our bus is carrying 6. So the math is really easy. Another reason why we want to use picking numbers is we make the math so easy. Pick small numbers, it's easy. You should be able to do this computation. You've had this computation. My son who's 9 can do this computation. Anthony, which is his name also. Hey, if I have 10 and I add 2, what do you have? Oh, 12, Dad. Now, if I subtract 4, what do you got? 8, Dad. If I add 2 more, what do I have? 6. He can do that math. You guys should be able to do that as well, okay? All right. So again, we have answers all over the board. Everybody's got D, we got C. Before you shout the answers out, do this work that I'm doing, okay, guys? All right, so now we have 6 as the target. Now we have to go back and plug in for X as 10 and Y as 2. And we're looking for 6. And it is D, guys. Okay? It is D. Questions so far on the technique, on what I'm teaching you. Again, we'll find variables in the answer choices. Let's plug in for X or a Y or a T or S or a V, whatever it may be. Solve the problem. Get the target number. I usually like to circle the target number. Okay. All right, here's another technique, but we're going to skip out of this. Let me escape out of this right now. I want to go back to the test booklet. Okay. Here's what I want you to do for homework. Again, I'm not checking it, so nobody's going to check it, is to go to the math section on an SAT test. Again, you have the links to these practice tests, and go to a section. So let's look at section 2, math 2. So Rika, you were asking this. And I want you to go through a test and look at the questions and see, could that be a picking number based on how it's asked? So let's look at it. Look at number 1, number 3, number 4. I don't see any algebra here yet. Okay. Oh, here we go. This is one, potentially. Oh, look, number 20. It's a geometry. Actually, you could do it on geometry. It says in terms of X, and there's X's in the answer choices. There's one. Here's A, B, and C's over here. There's some X's in the answer choices. Here's another one, X minus 70, 70 minus X. And go through them and start to recognize, could this be a plug-in potentially? Okay. Oh, here's a P is divided by, I don't know a P. When A is multiplied by 2, what is the effect on P? There's A's and P's, works. Okay. So on this particular test, there's a handful of them. Okay, here's some more D's over here. A dog eats 7 cans of food in 3 days. Dog eats in 3 plus D days. This is how you learn about the test and recognize things. Okay, so you get a handful. It's not in every question. Sophia, great question. She asked, does it just take practice? Because when I first look at the problem, I can't do the technique at first glance, but it makes sense after I go over it. Yeah, Sophia, that's why test prep and preparing for this test, it's not overnight. It takes a lot of practice and practicing the technique. So you got to learn methods to solve problems, then practice them. Think about anything you do. Sophia, do you play an instrument, play a sport, tie a shoe? When you first learn to tie a shoe, it's like, oh my God, it's going to take me forever. And you got past it. If you drive now, you juniors should be driving. Oh, when I first got in the car, I would have to look at the mirror, do this, I'd have to do that, I'd seatbelt. It took you forever to even just pull out of the driveway. Now it doesn't. It's practice, guys, and practicing the same method over and over again. It's repetition and doing it the same way each time. That's the key. Okay, guys, so same way each time. So again, as I go through the test, you're seeing that there's, A's and B's and X's and stuff like that. That's how you start to recognize it. So you got to do the practice, the problems that I give you, do some more, and start to learn it, okay? Yes, all the math questions on the ACT or SAT are the same amount of points. So that's why I said personal order of difficulty. Do the ones you're good at. They're worth the same. Don't do the hard ones. Make sure the easy ones are great. Accuracy is king. That's why I'm telling you guys that stuff. They're all worth the same. Yeah, right. It's going to take you time to solve it. Sure. You just got to keep doing it until you get the hang of it. Exactly. So, guys, it's practice. That's why I'm teaching you this stuff. Okay. You're not going to get it just after tonight. You might go, I kind of get that. You might not even believe me, though. Okay. All right. So, let's share my slides again. Now, I'm going to teach you another technique, guys. Okay. It's called back solving. Okay. So here's a problem. Here's another math problem. Take a look at it. Is there any variables in the choices now? There's no variables here, right? It feels algebraic though, okay? This is another type of problem that you can use quite a bit on the test, okay? So this last half of the class is to teach you this technique. So the other one was plugging in. This one's called back solving, okay? It feels algebraic, but they're asking me, so now they didn't underline this, I underlined it. It said, how old is Tom now? When they ask for something very specific like this, okay, like how old is Tom? And all the answers represent Tom's age, but only one of them is going to be the answer. Only one answer is actually Tom's age. That's a method we can use in back solving. So again, everybody who's asking the same questions, how do I know to do, like, first you have to understand how to recognize this type of technique. And when you do, it's great. Then it's practicing how to use it over and over again until you're really good at it, and it doesn't take you that extra time to think about doing it. It just happens instinctually. You'll become really solid at this, and this is a really great technique, okay? Again, it's another shortcut if you want to call it that. I call it just a technique, okay? So here's the problem, okay? In back solving, all we do in back solving now, guys, is we use the answers to plug in. We don't come up with our own numbers. We're taking the answer choices, plug them into the problem, and seeing if it works, okay? That's all what back solving is. So now we get to use the answer choices to see if it works out. Okay, so here's the technique. Start in the middle. So start with C. Now, if it's on an SAT, you only have 4 choices. So start at B or C, either one, doesn't matter. On an ACT, start in the middle. Okay? And then we're going to solve it. So let's start at 18. Okay, so that means if this is the scenario, that means Tom is 18. So now we've got to label some things and we got to solve it. So it says if Tom is twice as old as Linda, so if Tom is 18 according to answer choice C, then how old is Linda? Linda's 9. Okay, again, simple numbers. We're just solving simple. We don't even need a calculator for this. So if Tom is twice as old as Linda, and Linda is 4 years younger than Karen, so Karen's got to be what? 13, because she's 4 years younger than Linda. I mean, Linda's 4 years younger than. I really like. Oh, my shoe analogies, you like those as to tying the shoes? Well, that's a simple one. Just because my youngest is learning to tie his shoes now, and so that's part of it. Watching them struggle. My older one finally gets it, and he does it automatically. My younger one still has some Velcro shoes, and he's still not fully getting it. So sometimes we put the Velcro shoes on because we don't want to have to keep tying them. So thank you. It's real life situation, but that's an example. And there's a whole bunch of them. Imagine if you play an instrument, the first time you play the guitar, you didn't know what now you can pick it up and strum it away. Everything you do, guys, has taken repetition and practice. The things that you're masters at or you're really good at has taken practice over time. This is what you have to do here. Just the same with school. You got to study and practice it. Anyway, so Linda's 4 years younger than Karen. Great. And Karen is 1/3 as old as Brian. So that means Brian, if 1/3, so Brian's going to be 39. Okay. Now, these back solving questions, here's the key to them. There's a stipulation in it or a requirement that tells us what the answer is going to be. So is 18 the answer? Well, we don't know because we got to figure out what the requirement is. Well, we did all the math here, 18, 9, 13, and 39. Well, the requirement in this particular problem is 1/3 as old as Brian, who'll be twice as old as Tom will be next year. Sounds confusing. So let's just take it a little bit. So Brian will be twice as old as Tom will be next year. Well, Brian will be 40 next year. And Tom will be 19 because Tom is 18 right now. T is 18. So next year, Tom will be 19. So the requirement is Brian's got to be twice as old as Tom will be next year. Well, 40 and 19, is that twice as much? It's not. So that can't be your answer. So we cross C out. The other thing we should note, so that's the requirement. I put it in blue, is that it has to be, Tom has to be older because we need Tom to be a little bit older to make sure that it fits the requirement. Now, if you don't figure that out, then still start picking a number in the answer choice and try it. That's why we start in the middle. We'll be able to eliminate smaller or larger numbers, and that just helps save time. So let's try 22 now. 22, we'll go through it quick. Tom is twice as old as Linda. Linda's got to be 11. Karen's going to be 15. 3 times as old will be 45. That means twice as old will Tom next year, 46 and 23. That fits. 23 times 2 is 46. That's my answer. Once I find it, I move on. Okay? You don't have to try 26. In plugging in, you try every single answer because those are variables. Sometimes more than one works. In back solving, you find the answer, you're done. You move on. Now we move on. So here's the next one. Okay? By the way, I'm giving you some harder ones. These are ones you're going to find at number maybe 40, 45, 50. These aren't ones you're going to find at number 2 or number 4. Oh, Alani, the stipulation is just the requirement. So let me go back. You see this in blue? The requirement is going to be in the problem. That's going to tell us we have the right answer. Remember, we're going backwards. So in order to go backwards, in order to find the right answer, we have to, there's always going to be a requirement in that. So that's the stipulation. So this one was Brian, who will be twice as old as Tom will be next year. Let's find the stipulation here. Okay, so first is we need to recognize it's a back solving. Why? Because it's how many green jelly beans should be in the bag. Should he add to the bag? It's very specific. Okay. So Carl has a bag. So let's start again. We start at C. So once you recognize it's a back solve, we go right to the problem. We go to C. Okay, let's go to C. I'm labeling it also. This is how many green are added. And then based on what the problem's saying, I'm labeling this. And then in my booklet, in my test booklet, I'm just going across right here. I'm just going to write across. So do work neatly in your book. It's going to make a big difference, okay? So here we go. We start at 20. And remember, the 1/5 of the jelly beans are blue. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. I think I went ahead. So we start at C. Some of these things are coming out of order, so we're going to have to deal with it. Anyway, so if we start at 20, we add 4. Remember, Carl has 5 blue and 4 green. So if we start with 20 green are added, that means we have 24 total. So again, we're working backwards. That means there's also 5 that were blue. So there's total of 29. The requirement is that 1/5 in the bag are blue. So is this 1/5? Okay. Is it 1/5? And it's not. 5 over 29. So again, they're looking 1/5 are blue. 5 over 29, is that 1/5? It's not. So that's why it cannot be the answer. Do we need more green in the bag or fewer green jelly beans in the bag? And if you know that, then you can eliminate, well, it's going to be fewer green because we want more blue jelly beans because 5/29 is more like 1/6. So I need more blue. So I'm going to go and eliminate C, D, and E right off the bat. Okay. Okay. Some of you guys are wrong, unfortunately, because you're still learning. Oh, my screen froze again. Sorry. Sorry, guys. My screen froze again. So I'm going to back it up a bit. All right. So again, I'll walk you through it really quickly again. Thank you for keeping me honest, Mira. All right. I got some of yours. Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, I start at C because it's in the middle. If the answer is too big, okay, I eliminate everything below it. If the answer is too small, I eliminate everything above it. Okay, got that? Great question. All right, so again, the stipulation or requirement is 1/5 in the bag have to be blue. That's how I know I have the answer. So we start at C at 20. If there's 20 here, remember, let's go back. So if we start green, how many green are added? That's what we're asking. They're asking us. Well, we're saying there's 20. We're back solving. So if they start out with 5 blue and 4 green, that means we have 24 total green because we add 4. And we add 5 more blue. That gives me 29. That's how I get 5 29ths. 5 over 29 are blue in answer choice C. So is that my answer? Excuse me, I'm saying no because that's not 1/5, guys, because the stipulation of the requirement is it has to be 1/5 blue. 5/29 is not 1/5. It's more like 1/6. So it's not my answer. And that's why I get rid of C, D, and E. I need more blue, so fewer green. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. And if you're getting confused, guys, that's part of it. You're going to have to go back and learn a little bit more. I think every time I press the button. So there's the work, guys. Okay. I'm clicking so many buttons trying to answer your Q&As and stuff that I think I keep clicking pause on the share side. So apologize for that. All right. So now we got to go to 16. So now let's go to the next one. 16. If there's 16 to start added to the bag, that means we have 20 total because we had started with the 4. That means there are how many blue now? Well, there's still 5 blue. So 20 plus 5 is 25. Well, there's 5 blue. 5 of 25, is that 1/5? Yes, it is. That means that's my answer because that's the requirement. And that's how we back solve, guys. Here's another one. This one's a little bit easier. It's dealing with ratios. But even in a ratio problem, we can back solve it. Okay, so try to back solve it. Grace, no, well, here's the thing. Sometimes you don't want to back solve it. Sometimes just solving it is quicker. Okay, and then not all questions you can back solve. Okay, it depends. Again, how do we know when we should back solve? One is, look what it's asking. What is the amount contributed by Fred? It asks for something really specific like that. And the answers represent all choices of the amount contributed by Fred. We now can do that. And there's a requirement in the problem that allows us to go back and to find the answer. So a lot of times you can back solve. Again, that's what you have to start looking. And part of it is going through as many problems as you can. Okay. I'm going to go through it quickly now. So again, we recognize that it's one of these problems. The answers represent Fred. Let's start at C. So if Fred has 3,200, the amount of ratio is 8:6 to 1 for Bill, John, and Fred. So Fred gets the 1, Bill gets the 8, and John gets the 6. Okay, so between the two of them, if Fred gets 3,200, that only leaves 2,800 for John and Bill. Can that even be the answer? It can't, especially if the ratio is Fred that gets 1 of the ratio. That's not enough. John and Bill have to have more. So just by common sense, I don't have to solve that. Okay? So I can eliminate some choices. I can eliminate everything that has Fred having a large answer, guys. Okay? So again, this one's a little bit easier than the other ones we did, but I'm just trying to point out how we can use this. So let's eliminate C, D, and E. Now let's try 2,400. That leaves 3,600 between them two, which is still not enough. If we tried 400, you would see that, oh, okay, that ratio works. That gives me the answer. So again, scoring higher in math, these are the 5 things that we want to do. Pacing, personal order difficulty. We've talked about process elimination a bunch and ballparking the last session. Plugging in. I wear all different kinds of shoes. My kids wear Nike a lot. So that was the question to the shoe question. And plugging in the answers or back solving. I call it PETA, plug in the answers, or you can call it back solve. Those are the 5 things you're going to need on this math section. I showed you 2 of them tonight. Okay. I'm going to show you another problem here, not this one. This is, I'm not going to do this one. No, I thought I had one more math problem for you guys. Where is it? Yeah, let's do this one. All right, here's another math problem, guys. So it's different than the back solve and the PETA one, okay? And it's different than the plugin, but it's kind of a combination of the two. So read it. Well, it's actually more of a plugin here. So here's a problem now that it feels algebraic. There's no algebra, okay? And it's a geometry type of problem. So I want to show you that, look, in an instance of this, you can still do some stuff here. First is, if they don't give you pictures, draw your own. Okay, here's a rectangular plot of land. Oh, I didn't draw it here, so I'm gonna have to draw it for you guys. So let's take a rectangular plot of land. Let's draw it, okay? Now, there's no numbers given, but it feels algebraic or they don't have any numbers. Well, let's pick our own numbers again. Rectangular plot of land with area 12. So if the area is 12, that means the sides, the length and the width can be what? Well, you can make it 2 and 6, 12 and 1. I'm going to make it 3 and 4. You do what you want, okay? So again, I'm just picking numbers of this. So notice that there's no variables here, but it feels like I can do something like that, so I'm going to do it. So if I have 3 and 4, so length of the side, area 12, that works. Now, they're doubled. So now I got to draw a bigger plot because we're going to double it. So now if I double, what is the new area? So if I go from 3, I double that, that becomes 6, and that becomes 8, right? What's my new area? Area is up, length times width, that's 48. There's my answer. So it's not back solving. I mean, you can back solve this one and plug it in and try it, but it's easier to solve it from the front end by just plugging in our own numbers to do it. So again, just another type like that. Some of you, I think you got it wrong, okay? Again, some of you weren't maybe plugging in. So again, I'm showing you plugging in is really a great technique, okay? All right, so let's escape out of this. All right, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to go back to an ACT test. Here we are. Let me clear my screen. And again, guys, we have about 15 more minutes. I want to walk you. So then now let's go and let's look for some back solving problems. By the way, on this test, that's one of your homework. I want to have you go through the test, look up for back solving questions, and look for plugging in questions, okay? So looking at it, we want to look for things that give something specific. For example, what is C? That's specific, and they give you answers. It's not variables here. So we can back solve that one. What will be Jorge's new hourly wage? Oh, we can back solve here. What is the mean of these monthly fees? You can back solve here, but somebody asked this early. It's probably just easier to just find the average here than to back solve. So on this one, I could back solve it, but I'd rather just find the average of that one. Okay, so you can do things multiple ways, but back solving is something you can do quite often. What is the 7th term of the geometric sequence? You can back solve here, but it might be easier to do it from the front end. But again, you can back solve. What is the perimeter of the rectangle in centimeters? You can back solve. It's something specific. Okay. This one we said was a plugging in one. So as we go through it, again, I just am familiar with the test. When I see a problem, I can see it. So you look through the problem, and if you find a back solve, again, under personal order of difficulty, yeah, oh, if only all the math problems were easy. Well, here's the thing. Yeah, this recording will be on the student drive if you have to leave early, guys, so you can watch it back, especially if you didn't understand something. Some problems may look hard now, but with back solving, they become easier. So maybe a hard problem is a little bit easier. They don't know you're going to use back solving, the people who write the test on the SAT or the ACT. So even plugging in a problem that might have been medium or difficult are now easier or medium, maybe even easy for you. So again, put that in your personal order of difficulty. If you get really good at these two methods, add it to your personal order of difficulty. I always do the algebraic questions and the back solve questions because to me, they become easy once you use basic numbers. They're hard if you do them algebraically and you try to solve them without back solving. Okay, so you have to figure that out. Okay. You got to find if you're really good at it and practice it. So again, there's lots of back solving on something like this. If we open up an SAT and you go to a math section, do the same thing. Let's look at some math questions and start to recognize them. That's part of your homework too, recognizing problems. By the way, on the SAT math, another difference is they give you actually some formulas that you want, which is nice. In this section on the SAT, one of the differences, this section you can't use a calculator. On the other section, you can. Again, here's a plugin. Look, M's and P's, right? Oh, here's another plugin, R's and P's. Here is a back solve you can use. What is the value of 4b over a? This is a back solve you can use. Oh, sorry, my test left me. Okay. So right now, guys, again, I'm just kind of walking through what I would be doing if I was at home and I was prepping. I would go through these questions. I would look through a test like that, which you have access to these links, and I would go through it, and then I would do the problem. Once I recognize it as a back solver plugin, do it using the technique to make sure you get it. What was the price per pound of beef? There's can be a back solve. So again, something really specific, answer choices. This one has variables. Again, you probably would solve this, not necessarily plug in on that one. Somebody asked that before. So sometimes it's better to just solve it as is using ratios or averages, but sometimes you want to use the techniques I showed you tonight. But that takes practice, okay? Yes, there's an answer document for these problems. One says practice problems, the other ones are answers. And I have answers written up for the plugins and for the back solving. For the questions on these exams, the ones by ACT and SAT, you have to go to the test booklet and look up the answers, okay? So these are just two certain ways to solve math. Yes, so Rika, yeah, these are two ways. There's a lot more ways, and I only got to two tonight because that's all we have time for. There's other math problems out there, like how to solve ratios and how to solve averages and how to do simultaneous equations and how to do slope and how to, so there's a bunch of things. That'll come in the second math lesson. We'll teach you a few more things that are very frequently tested. But for tonight, these are the things that you can use on a lot more questions than just a trig question that you only have a couple on, okay? So yes, these are just two certain ways to solve problems that you need to master. You need to master these. If you want to get a better math score, this is one way. Master these two techniques, okay? You got to practice them. You got to take full-length tests and practice them. You got to be able to recognize them. So when you go look through a test booklet, it's like tying your shoe. You don't even think twice about it. You look at it and you go, back solve, plug in. Oh, look at that one. That's one average ratio. Oh, this one is a geometry plugin. This one is a slope formula. This one is, and you just can tell all the different types of questions. Okay, look at this one. Number 19 is a trig question. You just got to be able to know that. This is a solve for X. So that's part of it, okay? Somebody, if you want to do a full-length practice test, yes, you have links to those practice tests, and it has scoring grids. It tells you. You don't estimate your score. You can find your exact score. And basically, it's about totaling up how many you got right and seeing the score conversion chart. So look those tests up that we're linked to, and it has a scoring grid. It tells you how to score it. Add up what you got right. Oh, I got 40 math questions right on the ACT. Great, I got a 24. That's all you do. Yeah, so everyone's like, oh, Rika's wondering, well, I'm teaching you certain ways to do certain types of math problems. Yes, I'm not going to teach you the math problem that's only going to be on there maybe one question, if at all, because you're not going to see, you'll see that, but only a few. I'm going to teach you, and well, one, I don't have time to teach you everything, but in this class and the global strategies class, things that you're going to see more regularly that you can use. Pacing you can use everywhere. That's going to help you get more points. This is going to help you get more points. I'm not going to teach you imaginary numbers because maybe you get one question on that, okay? So part of it is learn some of this stuff. If you need more for your goal score, you got to go get it on your own. Whether you buy a book, you take an online class, you go find a tutor, you do some work on your own, you have to go get more of it. This is to kind of get you going, learn some stuff, and this stuff can really make a difference, but you might need more. I don't know where you are in your score and where you want to go with it, okay? But these are things that are frequently tested that you can use to your advantage, okay? Okay, so other questions on what I showed you tonight. I'll turn my video, I'm still here. No, great questions, Rika. This is great. This is how you were trying to figure this out. Okay, so with a lot of questions, that probably tells me that you probably haven't done much for that ACT beforehand, which is okay, but hopefully you're not taking a test mid-April, because if you're trying to get a huge improvement, that's probably not going to happen. You need more time to learn this stuff and actually practice it. So, so guys, that's part of it. Let me share my student folder again. So I'll show you again. Let's go in there. So go in your student folder here, and here's where those, I told you, the practice problems are. Class 3 plugins. You have plugin answers and plugin practice. Go to them, and you open them up, and look, got some problems in here. This one we did in class, so you don't have to do it. This one we did not do. We didn't do any of the other ones. Okay, and then I refer you to the SAT practice test 1, and then go there, and ACT practice test, so you actually would go and do that. So that's what I want you to do. I'm not going to practice it. I mean, I'm not going to check it. That's on you guys, okay? And then here's the links to the practice tests, okay? If you need to watch the recording, head to the recording, okay? So that's a lot, guys. That's even just 2 techniques. It's a lot, but you got to practice it. You got to hone that skill and work on it, practice it, analyze what you're doing, how long it's taking you. It might seem a little bit slow at first, but that's why you've got to do 50, 100, 200 math problems like this. Overall, you should be doing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of math problems to get better at the math section, at recognizing problems, finding a method for each question type, and having that game plan, okay? So to wrap up, you know, you had your plug-in technique. We'll recap it. You want to, let's show you. Oh, there we go. So plug in, we talked about it. Pick a number to remind you. Solve for the target right there. Do process elimination, and then find your answer. If more than one works, you try them all with the variables in the answer choice. If more than one works, you plug in a different number. Okay, that typically doesn't happen too much. On back solving, or what we call PETA, plug in the answer choices. Here, what is it? You start in the middle, because if it's too big, you can eliminate up or down, okay? You solve the mathematical part of it, okay? You find the requirement. In this case, it was Brian, who's twice as old as Tom, will be next year. Once you find the answer, you move on. Okay, so that's what we learned tonight. Okay, so with that said, I think we are wrapping up here. Any last questions? Okay, guys? Still a bunch of you left. You're welcome. Yeah, no, it's every teacher does some things a little different, but again, it's there's still a lot. It sounded comprehensive, but we only covered 2 things. You know, I wish we could cover more with time we have. You're welcome. I'm glad it was worthwhile for you. But that's why we could keep plugging away. You got to break this test down at all the different question types. So again, you'll have another session. Travis will have another one. Alan will have another one. Travis will have 2. We'll try to do more of this stuff. Yeah, Hannah, you got to catch up. Go watch the other 2 videos, but you still should have got something out of it. Yep, you're welcome, everybody. Great. Get working, and we'll be in touch. Again, email me, check out the student folder, do some questions, practice, practice, practice. Okay? Great questions. Excellent. Sally, thank you, thank you. Hannah, good luck. Catch up. Email me if you have a question. Sophia, yes, I know it's a lot of practice. When are you taking the test, Sophia? Sam, no problem. And thanks for everybody for keeping me honest every time my screen went off. That's why I need you guys. We help each other out. Excellent, Rika. Great questions. Keep them coming. Sophia, perfect. June is great. That'll, once you get through this, even midway through, I want you to take a practice test, okay? See how you score, where you're at. After this program is over, another practice test, where you're at from there. Then do some prep on your own and through April and May. Take a couple more practice tests. You have a lot of those, you know, that I sent you guys. So, okay, great time. That's perfect. June is good. When are March scores going up? The 11th, you should probably get them, I don't know, another week, 2 weeks, the latest. Did you take the March test? Yeah, okay. So did you do any prep for the March test, or you just went in and took it? Oh, okay. All right. So they probably taught you some stuff like this. That's probably why you're always going, hey, are you doing plug and chug? I don't know if you're that guy. Oh, and some people did Princeton U. So a lot of that stuff, you'll see the similar stuff. So if you've done prep classes, guys, you may not need this. It's be helpful. Um, you know, to hear it again or hear it from a little different perspective. But a lot of you, for you, it might be just a lot more practice and review and analysis. If you have methods, then that's what we're teaching, some methods and some content. You might not necessarily need that, but if you find it helpful, then great, keep coming, okay? Other prep classes that I know of. Well, if you've taken one, I don't believe in going back and forth and stuff. Let's take that offline. Why don't you email me directly, AJ Russomano at Capo USD, and we can talk about that. Or maybe even too, at the end of this all, I'll talk about some other prep classes. But why don't you shoot me an email of the ones you have questions on? We can start some dialogue that way as well. But maybe I'll do a session where I'll take 10 minutes and we'll talk about prep classes. Um, and I'll talk a little bit more in depth if that's another question we get. All right, guys, I'm going to stop the recording, but you can keep some questions coming in. It's just 7:30 now, so um, all right, let's stop the